Hey guys, and welcome to the Garage Athlete Show. So today I am joined by the lovely Sophie Dawson. My illustrious co-hosts have got other duties tonight, so it's just me and Soph. So I think we are on episode 61. I don't know if I said that already. So yeah, we've just passed kind of like the big milestone. So I've wanted to get Sophie on the podcast for a little while now. I've known Sophie for just over 2 years. We both competed in the Rhinos Classic way back in 2019. That doesn't feel like 2 years has passed.
No.
Was that the Rhinos? Was that your first show, or have you done it before?
That was my first show. Yeah, that was my
first
show.
I saw Sophie walk away with that. I think it was a bronze third place in your first show.
Yeah.
Looked amazing on that day. I've kept up with kind of like your progress. So Sophie is a personal trainer in a gym that is quite close to me, and I know her partner very, very well as well. So I followed her progress for the last couple of years, made insane levels of changes in the 2 years, to say that we had 2 lockdowns in that time. So, and then has gone on to win 2 regional shows with the UKBFF. So very, very good aspiring bodybuilder coming up through the ranks at the moment. So we thought we would get her on to talk all things training, nutrition, and maybe a little bit of home gyms, because I know she has a little bit of a home gym setup as well. So I'll hand over to Sophie. Why don't you introduce yourself? Let me know who you are a little bit, and yeah, I'll just shut up.
Yeah, so I got into bodybuilding back in 2019, as you said. To be honest, I never thought I could do anything like a show. And when I met my partner, he was like, one of the first things he said to me was like, "Do you compete?" And I was like, "No." And I was like, he's like, "Well, you should." And I was like, "I never thought I could do anything like that." And he was like, "Yeah, you definitely could. Like, let's put you into competition." And I was like, "Oh, all right then, let's just give it a go." So I think leading up to the Rhinos, I think I only trained really for it for 6 months, including the prep. So wow. it was a very, very, very last minute sort of thing. I was just kind of like, okay, that's the show date. Let's just get ready for it. So we very quickly tried to pack on as much muscle as we can and then come back down to it. And it was just really a test run, see whether I liked it, really. And in the past, prior to getting into personal training, I did have quite a lot of trouble with food and had quite a bad binge eating disorder, and ended up, I was like 6 stone at my very lightest weight. So I was very unhealthy and with food and my body image, etc. So I kind of wanted to do my first prep to be able to get through all of that with such a big food focus and come out the other side and go, you know what, I literally have no problem with food at all, because there is quite a lot of stigma around bodybuilding that it does drive a lot of people into eating disorders if they're not in the right headspace to get into it initially. But I had really good support network going into the show, and I really actually enjoyed prep. Like it's a big thing that a lot of people don't like. So, yeah. And they struggle a lot through it. But I actually really enjoyed the whole process and seeing your body change. And it's a different, every single day is a challenge. And
what is it, this old chestnut again? Fuck's sake.
So I kind of lost a bit of direction, but my friend Sarah said that she was planning on doing a show because we competed together at the Rhinos Classic in 2019. She was doing a show this year in 2021, and I was kind of like, oh, should we do it together? Like, it'd be nice just to get on the stage back together again. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, we'll just have a nice fun show day. Like, doesn't matter what happens. Like, it's just going to be fun. So I sort of set my sights on that and then competed with that. That was in Brighton in September. That was on the 12th of September, and went on to win that show, which was just crazy. And if you'd have asked me back in 2019, like, you're going to win a bodybuilding show, I'd have been like, no, I can't, but it happened. So it was amazing. And then whilst in condition, I was just like, you know what, we may as well do another one. So we did another one 2 weeks later and got another first place trophy. So that was just amazing, literally amazing. Yeah, so it's been one hell of a journey and I'm just loving it. It's just great.
Good. So yeah, it's an interesting point you brought up there about how you had an eating disorder and then you've got into bodybuilding and that's actually helped you overcome the eating disorder. So like, do you mind talking about that or do you know?
Yeah,
so
not all. Yeah, not all.
how do you think bodybuilding helped you? Because as you said, quite a lot of people blame bodybuilding for creating eating disorders for people that are like predisposed to it. So how did you find, what was it about that prep that helped you with that problem?
Yeah, so I would say that my eating disorder kind of came to an end at the back end of sort of 2018. So that's when I'd completely dealt with it and, you know, I was over it completely. And that's why going into prep was such a big deal, because I was kind of like, you know, this is kind of make or break for me as to whether really I have actually got over this. And that was sort of a validation that I was done with my problems with food and my relationship with food was now much, much better. But you also do have to have a complete understanding of why you're doing the show. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong and they try and use it as a sort of blanket to cover up their insecurities and go, you know, I'm going to get external gratification from standing on a stage, and that doesn't work. And that's where the eating disorders get sort of manifested, really. Whereas I went into the prep with no expectations, with just okay, let's just give it a go and, you know, see what happens. And, you know, you can walk into any show and you've got to realize that it's not all about the trophies, because it is so subjective. It's not like a powerlifting competition where, you know, you're the strongest on the day and it's actual fact. It's all just someone's opinion of how you look. So if you're happy with your look on the day and you're happy with how you look, then, you know, you just have to take it as that. And as I'm happy with how I am, it doesn't have to be gratified by somebody else judging you. You have to be happy with how you look and the actual journey, and appreciate that, you know, you've managed to get through that massive journey, which not many people would be able to do, because it's hard. It's very, very hard. But be proud of that and be like, okay, I've stepped on that stage and I'm happy enough with that. If I get a place and I get a placing, and just take it as that, rather than try and use it to go external gratification.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there 100%. The people that really struggle are the ones that are using it as a band-aid to cover up the fact that they are insecure, and they can turn to a sport where it's encouraged for you to basically
100%.
starve yourself for a period
and be neurotic
of time
about things.
Yeah, and you can get away with it because you can just say, I'm on prep. And then what happens is when these are the same people that are then lean year round, they never make progress from season to season because they can't let go of prep
of that
body.
image.
So it's definitely interesting to hear that from a female competitor's kind of point of view, and as somebody who's not afraid to put on a little bit of weight, like as you're going into an off season, because I think there's more and more girls now showcasing that, of the fact that actually to build muscle, you have to put on a little bit of body fat. You have to let go of the abs. You have to let go of that shape that you kind of take to the stage. Hi, Tinny. And be in a place where you're comfortable enough in yourself that you can let go of that temporary image of yourself. So that's really good. So how do you train? Let's run through that. So like, what sort of split do you use? Do you do high intensity, lower volume? Is it more of a higher volume approach? Kind of like, what sort of principles do you put in place with your training?
Yeah, so we've used a variety of loads of different types of splits. most of the time we do a lot of gym traveling, so we follow sort of a loose plan, and we know that we're going to start off with some kind of compound, usually at the start of the workout, and then follow on into isolation. We've been training on a sort of like a 5-day split at the minute, but going into this next off season, it's going to change. I want to try a completely different approach. I've been doing a lot of research into a lot of like the mountain dog stuff and fortitude training by Dr. Scott Stevenson, which is very confusing if you've got his book, but but I'm going to try and merge those two together. And the new split that we're going to be going on to is more focused on like bringing up the areas that I need to work on going into the finals next year. So we're going to be following like high frequency legs for 4 weeks, followed by high frequency back for 4 weeks, followed by high frequency legs and shoulders for 4 weeks. So that's on like a 12-week rotation. And we focus mostly on sort of, for the compounds, a sort of 6 to 12 rep range, so a bit heavier, and then for the isolation movements, using things like rest pause or drop sets, or those kind of more complicated sets, pump reps, etc. For the isolation exercises, but mostly working just literally pushing yourself to the absolute maximum. And I think that is more the key than any complicated split. I think you can make anything work as long as you're willing to put the effort in. And I think that's where a lot of people fall down, is that they don't know what true intensity is when you train. And I've seen it time and time again where we've had people that don't usually train with us come and train with us, and they're like, oh my god, are you two mental? Like, how do you train like this all the time?
Well, that's how you get the results that you do. And it's interesting that you say that so you train to maximum intensity. So are you going to all out failure on most sets then, rather than like reps in reserve and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's mostly, apart from if we were doing something like a safety bar squat, is something that I want to implement into this next phase. That wouldn't be to failure. That would be to about, you've got a couple of reps in the tank until you form.
So it's probably going to be technical failure then, rather than
100%,
all out muscle failure. Okay.
100%.
So but so say if you weren't using safety bar squats and you're using hack squats, you do that to like, so it's all about the what's the word, I'm trying to say complicatedness, but I can't think of the word. You know what I mean. Basically, the more complex a movement, so a squat pattern or something like that, you wouldn't take that to absolute failure just because it's dangerous to do so. Whereas something like bicep curls, you'll probably take that to all out failure.
100%. And just making sure that the form is perfect, especially on those things like deadlifts. RDLs is something that I absolutely love, and I think is underrated, especially for girls and growing glutes. Everybody seems to think that squats are the way, but things like RDLs and any bent over movements are the one. Things like that, 100%, making sure that the form doesn't break down, and when it does start to slightly break down, then it's time to call it, just to kind of avoid injury. And definitely working with trying to work around doing sort of 2 maximal sets rather than doing, I think people get too carried away with too much junk volume,
right,
and end up doing loads and loads and loads, and you just don't need to, especially if you go into failure. And I mean, I've learned the hard way by doing too much junk volume and then getting injured, and then that just sets you back completely. And because I get too carried away, because I just love training and just want to do more all the time.
I think it's interesting what you said there, how that, so you've been training for 2.5, 3 years now, that actually you've tried loads of different ways to train, and you're trying new stuff now. Like, I think too many people get too married to a particular style of training too early. Like, everybody's body's slightly different, everyone's genetically slightly different. Like, some people will react really, really well to high intensity, low volume training. Other people will react really well to higher frequency, higher volume training. Whereas actually what works for person A might not necessarily work well for person B. But also the body adapts. So if you only ever do high intensity, low volume training, like, you might be leaving a lot of stuff like still on the table because you've never tried the higher volume approach. So
yeah, and a lot of people get too caught up with just doing bro split and not training certain body parts enough. So they'll just do like arms on Monday, chest on Tuesday, shoulders on Wednesday, and it's not quite enough to bring those body parts up if that's what your goal is within the bodybuilding. Is, you know, that's not quite enough, because then you've got, if you're training, for example, your biceps on a Monday and you're not going to train them until the following Monday, it's such a small muscle group, it's recovered in 2 days anyway, and then you're ready to train it again.
Yeah, 100%. I think well, it's very, very quickly you can double somebody's effective training by training each muscle group twice a week. I think most bro split / pro, well, I don't know if you listen to the Real Bodybuilding podcast, but Fuad, I can't say his surname. Basically, he calls it the pro split because that's how the pros train. But they hit each muscle group twice. Because of how they split it. So it's not like back and bis, chest and tris, shoulders and arms. It might be like arms and calves on one day, legs on another, or sorry, quads, but they call it quads. But actually, there's some hamstrings in there as well. But they do hit the muscle groups twice a week. They split up the body parts so that you train 2 body parts on one day rather than the one. And that means that then they can hit it multiple times per week. Okay, so training, we've covered. Right, diet. So you've just come off a prep. So how long was your prep for that UKBFF show? And what does a prep diet look like for you? Like, how extreme do you go?
So I started at, I think, 17 weeks out. And I had my calories so high in the last off season, they were probably sitting at the highest they were sitting at was 3,600 a day. So they were pretty high, which meant that the prep was very, very easy for the vast majority of it. I would say that it only got sort of, when I got to 2 weeks out, it started to get tricky. And that's more just the fatigue than anything. But, you know, I would say in the first 5 weeks, I was still having something like a burger and fries or a pizza. I was still having on a refeed day on a Saturday, just because my body can just take it. It just naturally, it does burn a lot of calories, and I require a lot of calories in order to carry the muscle. And then by the time we just kept, you know, it's just a case of just monitoring it all the time and seeing exactly how things are moving and if they're moving in the right direction. And to be honest, I didn't really do any measuring of my weight this prep either. For my class, it's not on a weight cap, so I didn't even really need to measure the weight or take any measurements. It was pretty relaxed. I was just going purely on aesthetics and whether we were moving in the right direction. If you're doing something like a bodybuilding prep, especially being a bikini athlete, you know, you can't afford just to go on how you're looking every single day, and that's going to give you the best thing over I need to be a certain weight and I need to get a kilo off this week and I need to get this off this week. You know, it's not always quantifiable, you're being judged on your looks, you're not being judged on what your weight is on the scale. So we went mainly on sort of aesthetics every single week and just kept, my cardio didn't get any more than an hour on recovery days. And then by the time we got to 2 weeks out, I didn't really need to do much more cardio. I just sort of cut it down to steps. But by that point, my calories were pretty low. So I think the lowest they went down to was 1,100, which is quite a big drop from 3,600.
Yeah, I can imagine.
That was quite a big drop. But, you know, it's all in your mind. And if you've got the mental determination to get through it, then you will.
So I think that's interesting what you said there about how high your food went in the off season, because then it was like, the next question I've got is like, what does a bulking diet look like for you? So you've already mentioned that your food goes really high in the off season. You've got fast metabolism. You need that food in there in order to be able to build the muscle tissue. So just kind of go into a little bit more detail of kind of what you do in your off season in terms of food.
So after the prep, we're on a nice slow reverse back out now, which is another point that a lot of people struggle with, especially when they've had a very difficult diet, is trying not to excessively just splurge every single day. And it is tricky. It is 100% tricky, especially if you go out for a post-show meal, because once you've had that food, it's then kind of like, oh my god, it can open a can of worms for people, and then they'll just start eating and eating and eating, and then the next day, because you feel like, oh my god, yesterday felt so good, then the temptation to do it again and again and again and again, and then you're just eating way over what you've been eating.
I suffered really badly from that from my first prep.
Yeah, and your metabolism is so shattered from doing such an aggressive diet that, you know, you do have to try and be as caring towards it as possible. Reversing out. So I'm on the slow reverse out now, so I'm just going to try and push those calories even higher this next off season, and then see how much tissue that we can put on. I mean, this next little period straight after a show is like your ideal time frame for putting muscle on, because as you start putting the food back in, your training goes up after it's been suffering for the past however many weeks. Everything just starts ticking the boxes, and then by the time you build those calories up and up and up, in my opinion, it gets just as hard as prep to maintain those calories, because when you're on a bulk, it is tricky. It is tricky to eat food, and then when you're on prep, you think, oh my god, like I wish I
can't wait to be bulking again. When am I back on 4,000 calories? So it's 100%. I can empathize with that kind of completely. I've ended up, so this year, when's my last competition? So I started dieting end of February. I'm still dieting now. So my next show is the 7th of November, which is the Two Bros Natural Show. However, that's a regional qualifier. So if I do well in that, I will then have to go to Nationals, which is on the 20th of November. So no, the 28th of November. So I'll have been dieting from the end of February till the end of November. So what's that? 35 weeks, something around there. So I'm very lucky that I'm getting married in April. So I have a very set goal that I can't just balloon and get 100%. Completely out of shape for. So I'm actually going to keep my coach this time as well. Last time I sacked my coach off like 2 weeks after the show. So I was like, I can do this now. And I put on, I'm pretty sure I put on 5 or 6 kilos in 4 weeks. So it was excessive. So
it's good to have someone to be accountable to.
100%. I think what you've said there is basically, like, as coaches, why we get, if somebody comes to us and they want to build muscle, and we'll look at their physique and we'll go, you're carrying too much body fat to go into a building phase. This is why we diet people down to a point where their muscle is going to be sensitive enough to be able to build. And also, they've got enough space that if I'm pushing your food up to 4,000 calories, you're not going to be a 35% blob in like 3 weeks. So it's one of the reasons why we will pull body fat off somebody first, to get them to a point where we can then put them into a calorie surplus for an extended period of time, so that we can obviously build muscle tissue. So glad to hear that. Even at kind of like your own level, like, that's the same thing. Like I'm not, when somebody comes to me and we're doing that, we're not just doing it because it looks good on my Instagram. If somebody drops like body fat when in the first 90 days, there's actually a purpose behind it.
100%.
So as you said, so next year are you qualified now for nationals next year?
So qualified for finals next year, which is great, really, because then that means that I could have an improvement season in between, ready to then go back onto prep. Like a lot of other federations have done their finals this year, which then obviously just extends your prep massively. And then you can kind of, and if you're not expecting to get there and then you get a place there, it's kind of like, oh my god, I've got to carry on, because it just become it is a mental drain. It's a massive mental drain. It's more a mental drain than anything else, because it is so restrictive, and it's not the kind of diet that, you know, just average Joe blogs will do, because it is so extreme. And I think people look at stage photos and go, oh wow, like what have you been doing on prep? Like I want to follow what you've been doing on prep, but it's not something that just all the masses can attain to. And you know, it's very extreme.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things like bodybuilding is like put up there in the media as like the ultimate sign of like health and fitness. They push health and fitness together, whereas it's not. Like when you're on stage, you're probably in your least healthy, hormonally, energy-wise, like than you are at any other stage. Like it's that in-between point between like being at full-on bulk and when you're in prep. There's like a middle like 6 weeks where you're actually probably healthy. So I always think it's interesting when because I don't know about you, but my social media is like blown up while I've been on prep because people see that and that's what sells. It's the abs, it's the girl in their posing stuff. It's but they don't see all the work that goes on kind of behind 100%. That. And I think it's interesting now how more and more bodybuilders are doing things like a day in the life of, and people actually get to see that and they go, okay, this lifestyle's a bit extreme. Like,
and it's 24/7 every single day of the year. Even when you're in off season, you've got to be dedicated to that goal, and you can't lose sight of where you actually want to be. And that's why it's always like, and especially with prep, it's always just it's a very short period of time like that you can do that and you can maintain that. Like that stage weight is not maintainable forever, and you know, I'm sure that you've not been feeling that great over the past couple of weeks. I've been dieting since February.
It's last few weeks have been a bit brutal, but it's one of those things. Like I know in my head now I've got a goal for in 2 years time of kind of like where I want to be. And well, that's my kind of next question to yourself. So where is like the ultimate goal? Like where do you want to be? Do you want to be a pro? Like what is it that's kind of, what are you striving towards?
I'd really love to compete internationally. So going into the finals next year, I want to bring, I very much like within the UKBFF, they have the IFBB Pure Elite. And I really love their bikini look. I'm not keen on the bikini look within the IFBB. I'm not keen on like the posing or the presentation on the stage. But within the IFBB Elite Pro, the girls were a little bit bigger. They're a little bit more muscular. And I just really like their look. So I'd like to bring that kind of look to the British finals next year, and then see how we get on with that. There'll obviously be invites internationally as well. So I'd absolutely love to get one of those and to compete internationally. The UKBFF do send people like to the Arnolds in Spain. So that is the ultimate goal. I'd love to get to that point. And then down the line, I'd like to do figure within the figure division of bodybuilding, because I just love the category and I just think the girls look absolutely awesome. I love the posing, I love the muscularity of them. But
that's the next one up, isn't it?
Yeah. But it just takes a long time, and you've just got to be you've got to be sensible and understand as well that these people that you see, especially like with the Olympians that have just been on, a lot of them have been doing it 13 years. They've been doing it a long time, and I think people think, oh, I can get that result in 6 weeks or 12 weeks if I do a prep, but it doesn't take that long. It's all about the longevity with bodybuilding. You have to set goals that are not even like 6 months ahead or a year. They've got to be years and years ahead and be like, when I get to this point, I want to be here, rather than, you know, and a lot of it you do just kind of have to see how you get on, because it's obviously subjective and you just don't know who's going to turn up on the day. You can't be like, I'm going to go and win this show. You know, you've got to have a bit of a winner's mentality, but you also have to be humble within it and know that if you're not the best on the day, or they don't like how you look on the day, then that's just what it is, and understand that. But you do sort of have to have a end aspiring goal, because it is all about longevity with bodybuilding, because it's not a quick fix. It takes a long time.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about the sport, is you've got people still competing in their like 50s and 60s. Like there's a lot of categories. Like just because you're no longer can't remember if it's 35 or 40 where you go into the masters category or whatever it is. Like,
Yeah, from
there's
35.
like Nick Swan, is it, that
Yep.
runs Rhinos? Like, he's
Yep.
a masters
60, over 60.
yeah, so it's one of those things where I think it's that instant gratification thing, isn't it? And that's very much what's at the core of bodybuilding. It's delaying gratification. It's muscle takes a long time to build.
Yeah.
Dieting, you've got to put off what you want now, as in that food your brain is telling you want, and to move, basically move less, eat more. You've got to ignore that most basic of instincts. And having, as you said, your goals can't just be like 6 weeks, 12 weeks, like they're 1, 2, 3 years into the future, right? If I keep going down this road, I'm going to compete in this year, and then I'm going to take a year off to grow, or whatever it is. So yeah, definitely got that winner's mindset there. So what advice would you give to someone who's aspiring to compete? That's both men and women.
I'd say absolutely get a good coach, because there are a lot of coaches out there that themselves are, a lot of them, I think it's become very trendy as well to become a bodybuilder and then a coach. And if you've been through a prep, then that instantly means that you can be a coach, which I think seems to be a bit of like an Instagram trend at the moment. So get a good coach and do research into them to make sure that they've not just done one show and that they're, you know, advertising a 6-week fat loss program, that, you know, they are solid in their knowledge and they're going to take care of you, because it's not just your like physical well-being, it's also your mental well-being. When you go through a prep, like, you do have days where you're like, I can't do this, and like your mind does get warped and it does play tricks on you. So you need that good coach that's there to say and put you on the right track and know what's best for you at the time, rather than just keep pushing you and pushing you and pushing you up until you're at a breaking point. They've got to be able to work with you. So get a good coach is an absolute priority. And also make sure that you're going into it for the right reasons and completely understanding what you're signing yourself up for. It's not just, oh, I'm going to do a bit of cardio and go on a diet and stand on the stage. And you can't go into it going, you can't go to your first show going, I'm absolutely going to win this, and then compare yourself to everybody else. You've got to stay in your own lane and stay focused as to why you want it, and understand that it is subjective and you might not be the best on the day, or you might be the best on one day and you might not be the best on the other, but it's all just down to an opinion. And if you take it with that kind of pinch of salt, then, you know, you can just actually enjoy it for what it is. And it is really, really fun. Like, actually doing a show day is really fun, and being on the stage is really fun. Like, I've never felt as empowered ever in my whole life than standing on that stage. And even though it's absolutely terrifying, and I really didn't want to do that first show when I got there and went and watched some of the competitors on the stage, because I just had this overwhelming stage fright. But by the time I got up there, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And, you know, that in itself is enough to go, oh, wow, I'm so proud of myself. I can't believe that I've done this. So as long as you're doing it for the right reasons and making sure that you're in the right mental place in order to start, because if you're not in the right mental place to start, then you may as well just not do it, because you've got to be really tough mentally and really like filled with your own self-belief and that you can do it in order to get on that stage and actually compete and do it for the right reasons and not feel disappointed when you get there.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great bit of advice. Yeah, can't really add anything to that. Like, good coaching, manage your expectations, and then just have fun. Yeah, like 100%. The thing is, there's so many people going into all these shows where they've got, like, if they don't place, it ruins it for them. Yeah. Whereas for me, like, the first show that I did, I felt a bit like that. But then I went and competed in the Rhino show, and I went into that with zero expectations. So for those that don't know, in bodybuilding, you have tested and untested federations. In tested federations, basically, it's you will get randomly drug tested. within it. So no sort of performance enhancers can be used in that, whether that's anabolic steroids, diuretics, anything like that. Whereas with untested, it's generally accepted that some of the guys that are in there competing are going to have been using steroids, diuretics, things that are going to help them achieve that look to a higher level. So because I'm a natural athlete and I was going and competed in an untested federation, I went in with zero expectations because actually I was just there to get some more stage time. Because as Sophie said, getting up on stage and getting over that stage fright, and once you go up there and you enjoy yourself, like people can tell when you're enjoying yourself on stage. And I came away from that even with a participation trophy and felt amazing from it. But I took that same mentality into my latest show, where actually then I was up in the mix, but I didn't get a placing. Did it ruin my day? No, it didn't, because actually I went from being like dead last, not even I got last call out, to being in the first call out this time. Like that's a massive jump up in it. And now I know the next time that I compete, that my confidence is going to be much, much higher. So I might be up there in the mix. Different panel of judges, 7 weeks better condition, like who knows what will happen. So yeah, the only thing that I'd add on to that is manage your expectations and make sure that you're in it to enjoy the journey rather than the destination. Because if you're only in it to win trophies, and so because it looks good on your Instagram profile to have like pro next to it, like you're in it for the wrong reasons and it's going to be a long, hard road ahead. So yeah, I think that's probably a good motivational place to leave it. So
Yes.
Sophie, if the guys or girls want to follow you, like where can they find you? Like Instagram, Facebook, anything else that you do? If you've got a website or anything?
Yeah, so I've just got Instagram and Facebook. It's at Coached by Soph. And yeah, that's pretty much it. All my information, etc., is all on there, and updates and long posts on trying to motivate people.
Perfect. So I will pop a link to Sophie's Instagram page in the description below, I'm guessing. And then, yeah, it's been wonderful to have you on. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening, and I will probably see you and Tiny soon.
See you soon.
No worries.